This is Dave with NTI Online, and today we're going to talk about everybody's favorite topic, water quality for your boiler. In front of me, I have a bunch of test strips, and I also have some things you want to look out for. So the reason we're so concerned about water quality is mineral and scale buildup inside of your boiler is going to reduce the efficiency. It's also going to dramatically reduce the life of the product, and you will of course want to be a good service to your customer. So it's important that before you fill your boiler, you test the water that you're going to fill that boiler with, and that occasionally you check the water that's in the heating system to make sure that the pH is balanced, and also to make sure that you're not getting excess mineral buildup. So to start with, this is a heat exchanger that failed due to excessive hard water scale. If you look in here, you can see it's actually started to bulge out from the excessive heat. There's cracks in here. We've got a lot of calcium and lime. And this area here, which looks a little bit like concrete, used to be where the water was, and this is a mixture of black magnetite and then the white calcium and lime buildup. So we'll talk about where each of those comes from and how you can deal with them. That's a fire tube. This is a section of a water tube boiler, and you can probably see if you look in here, there's a layer of scale. Now the scale is a bit like a moth to a flame. The hottest part of the boiler is where your scale is going to collect. As that layer builds up, it insulates this steel from the water basically. So you've got a flame impinging directly onto the steel, but no water to cool it down. That causes the chemical structure of the steel to lose its temper, overheat. It becomes very brittle. It will fracture and crack and fail. And the scale, if you do everything right, will never be there in the first place. And on the other end of the extreme is this was a system that very likely was heavily oxygenated. And you can see there's calcium in there. There's also a lot of rust or hematite. Unfortunately, once your system turns orange, really the only option is to fully flush and refill, and hopefully you haven't done catastrophic damage. Now, the process before you begin testing, or for any new job before you put your boiler in, it's really cheap and really inexpensive. I went to a local hardware store and picked up a pH and hardness test strip. There's 150 of them. I believe this was $17. The strips do go bad. Don't pick up 10 years worth. They're good for about a year, and then you should throw them out and get new ones. And when they only cost 5 or 10 cents a piece, I think everybody can afford to do that. I also have some other reputable manufacturers here. Fernox, who is a fantastic water treat company. I've got a test kit here from NTI. NTI will have these available for you as well. This includes test strips and a magnetite tester. So before we go too much further, let's look at some water samples. These are 2 tap water samples. Both of them, to the naked eye, are indistinguishable. They both look like they'd be fantastic water, and in fact, they both are great drinking water. We're going to take off the lids here, and the first thing we're going to check for is this one. We're going to use the pH test strip. So all you do with these, you take your test strip. If you're doing this under a tap, you would just hold it under the tap for a split second. We're just going to dip those in. We're going to set them down, and we wait approximately 20 seconds, and you can hopefully already see there's a color change happening. This one's staying relatively neutral. This one's starting to turn a slightly darker orange, so we're going to pick those up. So our yellow one here corresponds to a pH of, I'm going to say it's approximately 6, which is just slightly on the acidic side. And because these have been sitting around for a long time, that kind of makes sense. And if we look at the other water sample, we can see its pH a little closer to 5. Now, a pH of 5 is going to be quite corrosive to your heating system, and that's going to cause not only excessive rust, which could plug your system up, it's also just going to damage everything. Your circulators, your zone valves, your pumps are all going to fail faster. So that's your pH. NTI has some test strips as well. So if you get one of these little kits here, we've got a pH test strip. I'm sure if you talk to your local NTI or Fernox rep, they'll be happy to sort you out and get you the parts you need. So these strips, you get 3 of them in here, and these actually test for 3 different things all at once. So we'll dip those in and set those to one side to cook for a bit. And while we're doing that, we're going to test for hardness using the Fernox test strip here. So we're going to dip those 2 in, set them down, and you can already see a pretty dramatic color change between these. If we take our hardness one, we'll do the one that looks like it's not so good first. And that is showing me a hardness of about 29, maybe a little less, maybe 20 grains per gallon of hardness. The one right beside it is right up here on the low end, and I would have to say that's somewhere between 0 and 3 grains of hardness. So very, very soft water. This one is perfectly adequate for your boiler system. You can fill it totally untreated and use it as is. If your water is like this one here, where it's quite hard, at this point you need to pre-soften the water before it goes into the boiler. We don't want a hardness that goes above about 5 or 6 grains per gallon is the best you can do. We allow you up to 7, however, if you can stay a little bit below that, it's better. So that's the Fernox test strip. This is again the cheap one that I bought at a local hardware store. And again, the way this guy works is it does both at once. And you scroll across and you can see what your water quality is. Look at our 80 test strips. And again, you can see a fairly significant color change between the two, which indicates these two water samples, while both are perfectly great to drink, are different, and one of them is good for your boiler, one of them is not. Let's get rid of all of our test strips. Cost-wise, I think we just spent about $3 in test strips to do this test 6 different times. So there's no cost to doing this. It's super easy to do, and it's very, very fast. So let's set those to one side. So that's the water you're going to fill your boiler with. One of the concerns you're going to run into is water that's already in the system. So this is a sample of untreated water, and this is representative of something you might find inside your boiler system. If you allow this to fill your boiler, you're going to end up with a heat exchanger that looks like one of these 3 that I've just shown you that's dramatically failed. So never use the chocolate milk. You're going to flush that out thoroughly until it runs clean and clear. That's where something like this Fernox turbidity tester comes in. What this is for is, if you look at the bottom, it's got a little disc there. You fill this up to the appropriate level, and essentially you look down through, and if you can't see the disc at the bottom, your water is in terrible condition and it tells you to descale the system. If it's moderately discolored, it says to use a magnetic separator. And if it's perfectly clear, then your water's good. If it's not perfectly clear, then you want to use a Fernox F1. You can also use, with the AD kits here, you get these little magnetic testing strips. And this water here is a bit more representative of what you might think you'd see in a system. Doesn't look too bad on its own. A little bit on the gray side. We've always been taught that gray is good. So all you do with this is you stick that in the water for a second and you know it instantly turns black. This has a tremendous amount of magnetite in it, far too much to stick into the boiler. Magnetite is iron that has come from the old heating system. Now, where that's going to come from, if you had a cast iron boiler, you need to thoroughly flush, refill your system, and make sure you use a magnetic separator. If the system contains a significant amount of iron, so if you've got cast iron radiators, cast iron or black iron piping, any significant amount of this, you're going to want to put in a magnetic separator, because this iron will dissolve into the water, and eventually that's going to make its way into the bearings on your pumps and your circulators. It's going to jam up zone valves, and eventually it slowly works its way underneath of O-rings and things like that, and it's going to cause leaks in your system and air vents to fail. And that's a super easy test. These are reusable. You just take a piece of paper towel, you can wash these off, and if you get water like this out of your system, please don't use it in the boiler. It's not a question of if it'll fail, it's more a question of when something is going to fail. And it may not be the boiler, it might be your system, but something to watch out for. And again, that water doesn't look too bad. We've always been taught that's good. For a condensing gas boiler, it's not. For a cast iron boiler, it might be acceptable. Next up, I'm going to show you what you want to do to test your heating system. And ideally, you do this on an annual basis. Doesn't have to be annually. You could do it every 2nd or 3rd year. But you should, from time to time, take a bit of water from your heating system and test the water to make sure it's not becoming acidic. You want to make sure you don't have excessive magnetite in the system. You definitely don't want to see anything like this. And your hardness should remain very low. If you filled the system with 5 grain hard water. 10 years from now, as long as there's no leaks, that water will still be 5 grains hard. If the hardness jumps up dramatically, it's an indication that you've got a leak in the system and your water feed valve has been allowing fresh water into that boiler. At that point, you know you need to address the system. So let's take you over to a boiler and show you that process next. So on an annual basis, what you want to do is find one of your boiler drains. I don't recommend using a relief valve. However, you can. Just be aware that you might get a leak if you do that. So usually you want to find a boiler drain. You're going to open it up, drain a little bit of water, and let the first little tiny bit, you're going to take that and throw it away. The reason you throw this away is dirt is going to settle in here and it's going to overly contaminate your system. So this is garbage. We'll get rid of that. Dump that down our sink. Then we're going to take, if you want to use the Fernox test kit, certainly you're welcome to. You can just do it with a plastic cup like this. And we're going to drain a bit more water out. You can already see this is a bit cleaner. And we're going to fill it up to the line. So this line says to fill it up to here. And if we look down through there, and we'll get my cameraman, we'll wait for the bubbles to settle. You'll notice that there's actually quite a bit of turbidity in this water. Turbidity is the cloudiness where you can't see very well through the water. That indicates there's minerals and content in the water, stuff that we don't want in there. So that's not a great sign. Let's take this over to our test bench and we're going to then have another look and see what our pH and what our hardness is. Okay, you should let the water sit for a couple of minutes, and the reason you do that is just any entrained bubbles or anything like that need to be let out of the system. Once you've let it sit for a few minutes, you look down through. In this particular test kit, if you can't see the black and yellow disc at the bottom, it indicates your water is quite bad and you should probably flush the entire system. Use a descaling compound like a Fernox DS40 or an 80 product or Sentinel, whatever product you like. You're going to descale the system, flush it through thoroughly with clean water, then refill it. You would also want to check, we're going to use a little test strip here, we'll dip that in. Takes about 20 seconds for this to do its job. And we're then going to compare that to our chart here. And we can see that looking at this chart, I would say that our pH is a little on the acidic side. And in the middle here, number 2, which I believe is our hardness. The hardness isn't actually too bad. And then the inhibitor level, in this case, we don't have any inhibitor in this system, so we actually don't have any inhibitor in there at all. And then there is an inhibitor test strip. So when you're using Fernox or 80s chemicals, there's a test strip that tells you that your inhibitor level is correct. If it's not correct, then you need to add more inhibitor. The good news is you can't add too much. You can have too little and it becomes ineffective. So if you have too little, you can just add a bit more. What these inhibitors do is they grab on to all the junk that floats around your system. And this junk is really only harmful once it sticks to the boiler or sticks to your pump or gets into a pump seal. What the inhibitors do is it's a little bit like soap. It kind of grabs onto these things. It keeps the junk in suspension so that it doesn't harm your system. We're not as fussy that it's there. We're more fussy that it's doing damage. So that's where you want to use something like a Fernox F1 product, which is going to provide a coating to all of that dirt and basically make it so that it no longer sticks to anything in your system. So that's a very basic, quick overview of water quality. Look at the water quality guidelines in each of your installation manuals. We have chemistry guidelines for what's allowed to be in your system. Do something like a check like this once a year to see how much magnetite there is. You may find that as these systems age, the magnetite is going to get worse, and that's because over the years more and more iron will dissolve into the water. If you're using the appropriate inhibitor product, that's less likely to occur. And again, you can see how easy it is. It only takes 30 seconds to do a test. Do that every now and again for your customers. It'll prolong the life of their boiler, it'll make them more efficient, and hopefully make the product more reliable. If you have any questions, give us a call at Tech Support at 800-688-2575. Thanks for watching the video today. If you'd like to check out more videos, see the link below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for all the future updates. And also check us out on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram.